Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Down Syndrome Center podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Kishore Velody. And as part of a series that we're going to be doing now, looking at what the national organizations are doing and how they can help you locally on the ground where you are. Today, we're going to be joined by Jordan Coe, who is the Executive Director of the National Down Syndrome Congress. And so excited to be able to start this series off with Jordan today. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's good to hear from you again, Kishore.
Yes, and you've been on the podcast before when we were talking about the great NDSC convention, which we just finished up in, where were we? New Orleans, man. And it feels like a whirlwind ago, just a couple of months ago now. But now that I have now retired off of the NDSC board, I suppose I should say now NDSC and not we quite as often as I have in the past. But so excited to have you on, Jordan, today. And well, before we get too far into it, why don't you share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you love working with this population?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and Kishore, you will always be part of the NDSC family,
Yes.
and we love having you here. You can keep using we don't mind as long as you don't go do anything crazy. So
Awesome.
As Kishore mentioned, I'm Jordan Coe. I'm the executive director at NDSC. And my background has been in the nonprofit sector, but primarily working in disability rights areas over the last 7 or 8 years now. And so to me personally, it's an area of passion because there was someone that was close to me that experienced some hearing loss, had to go through that situation, really opened my eyes to what the disability community goes through on a daily basis. And so when I had to choose, I'm working in the nonprofit sector in areas that I felt like could make a difference. It made sense to me to pick the civil rights area that really just needs extra attention, needs extra focus, needs people that are making a difference in it, and quality leadership. So when I found out about the National Down Syndrome Congress and I heard about, I think we'll talk about some of the amazing things that already happened with the organization. It just seemed like the right place for me. It's a family organization. It's a family approach to how we do everything. And I think you feel that, Kishore, from your time with us. And so, it just seemed like the perfect fit and the perfect place for me to continue to try and make an impact in our world.
Awesome. And, I know as part of the whole process of bringing you on board, boy, it's just this year, I think, when officially you started with the organization in the beginning of the year. I know you've done a lot of looking into the organization. And so some of the questions we're going to be talking about obviously will predate your maybe even your knowledge of what the organization was doing. But I really think that it's important for our audience to get to know a lot of the history of where did this organization come from? Like, why is it called National Down Syndrome Congress? What makes it national? Where did it come from?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and as you mentioned, I've been in the job. It seems like a year now, but for about 7.5, 8 months, and all of which has been great. But the history of the organization is that it stemmed initially from the ARC. So it was policy work that was already being done for people with intellectual disabilities across the span, and there were a group of parents that really felt like there needed to be an extra focus on Down syndrome. That the way the policies were being created and the way the attention and the focus needed to be created, there was an opportunity. And simultaneously to that, I think that it's so interesting to think about how the landscape has evolved for families and the listeners that are out there. You see all these local DSAs now and all these local groups. Well, NDSC started right around when a lot of those groups were coming together, that they were, initially parent support groups. And this was before social media, before Facebook, before it was easy to get in touch with each other. And so it really was an opportunity to try and galvanize those groups together, for them to share best practices, for them to be working on and doing some of the same things. So they could make those happen. And so it became a national entity in the hopes that there was leverage or opportunity to bring kind of all that power together. Because, I said this when I started with NDSC, and someone asked me that same question about why I want to do this work. And I said, two of the greatest board members that I knew were moms of kiddos with Down syndrome, and they were just the most tremendous advocates and fighters for their kids, and for justice and for what is right. And I knew that was the right place to go. And so bringing all of those folks together was really the goal of the National Down Syndrome Congress when it started. And so I think the name, is built around that idea of being national, bringing those different voices together and trying to make them part of that.
That's awesome. And I know that just this past summer, we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the organization. So it's really been around since the early 1970s, which is pretty impressive to have been around for so long and been doing the work that the NDSC has been doing. I guess that kind of transitions into a question I was going to ask you is, what are some of the ways you think that this organization serves the community, the people with Down syndrome? Like if somebody's hearing this podcast in the middle of some small town in America, like what is it that NDSC is serving? How is it that NDSC is serving them?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, our goal is to make sure that we are providing accurate and up-to-date information for anybody that needs it. And so that can include a DSA that's a really big DSA, right? Like if you look at the DSA of Cincinnati, which is a great organization and they're very robust, have a lot of staff and a lot of resources, or MDSC in Massachusetts, or so many others that are at that high level. We hope that there is information that we have out there that's accurate, that's up to date, that's current, that we can make sure that they can take a look at, all the way down to a family that just found out, and is just going through an initial diagnosis or whatever that looks like, that is somewhere that they can come to our website and they can know and trust what that information is. We have a lot of different ways. There's a lot of information directly on our website, but there are a lot of different mechanisms of webinars or small, activities that we put on where people can come in and get connected. There are a lot of other great organizations that are kind of plugging into certain ways, but we want to make sure that we are that broad resource piece of information. And then I think that, the other big part is our convention. You mentioned it earlier. We were in New Orleans this past year. It was great for us to get back together. I think for a lot of people, it was a really emotional and high point for them, especially given what the last 3 years have looked like with COVID. And so it was still a little bit of a smaller group because people, rightfully so, are still worried about, how COVID is going to affect them and their families. But it was really powerful for the people that were able to come back together, and a great reminder of what we're able to do when we do some of those things together, when we put all those trainings and workshops and speeches and connections in one place for people, the power of how that exponentially grows on that, and the ideas and the parenting tools and the medical tools and all of that stem from that are part of what we try and do. And I think, and I mentioned this earlier, but I think the real key to how we approach this is our family approach, that we think of everybody that is connecting to NDSC as family members, trying to talk to them like family members, to give them information like family members. We don't want people to think of us as a big corporate entity, but someone that if we can't help you, we can find someone that can help you, because we know everybody can use all the support they can get.
And I think there's even some other ways, as I've served on this board, that maybe I didn't even know about, the extent at which the NDSC is really advocating for people all over this country and really all over the world, when we think about it, from a national level, being able to go to Washington, D.C. and the impact that the NDSC is having there. Maybe if you could tell us just a little bit about the policy and the advocacy team and how that works at the NDSC.
Our policy team is a tremendous group of advocates that have a long history of working in Washington, D.C. and around the country on issues that are related to the things that are happening through our government, directly to those families. And so we do a lot of work of trying to make sure that those people that are representing us both at a state or national level are informed about the issues, that they understand what intellectual disabilities and Down syndrome really means, how their laws are affecting that. We have played a large part in IDEA reauthorizations. One of our staff members, Stephanie Smith-Lee, essentially stewarded post-secondary programs into existence, and helped George Mason start their initial program, and let that grow out. From there are over 300 programs now. So we do work on trying to get accreditation and trying to recognition of that. Lots of comments on regulations that are happening for the disability community. So they're doing tremendous work, and it's a really under the radar part of what we do. But what I would say is that it also, even though we talk about the webinars and the information that's out there, all of that is informed by our policy team, telling us what we need to know about what is happening on the ground and what that information needs to look like.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think I would definitely direct our listeners to prior podcasts that we've done on education and on policy. And quite often it's somebody who's a representative of from the NDSC who's on the podcast to talk about what's going on in those areas. So, you mentioned the convention, and also there's podcasts in the past that we've done on convention specifically, but that's a huge event, obviously, each year where we try to gather as many families together as possible to share information. In addition to convention, what else are some of the major events that happen each year that the NDSC is a part of, or maybe even some new ones that are happening this year that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, well, there are probably a couple different areas that I would point out. One of it, which is that coming up this September, we are hosting our first big game ball in Atlanta, and so we have this tremendous opportunity where we're able to partner with the Peach Bowl and the College Football Hall of Fame to host an event that's really featuring those post-secondary programs that I talked about earlier. And so we're super excited to be working with University of Georgia, their Destination Dogs program, Clemson Life, and Georgia Tech's Excel program this upcoming year to feature them and feature the opportunities that people have to be able to go to college that they often, parents forget. And they're like, there are college opportunities for my kids too. The biggest question we hear now around all this is, why didn't I know about this sooner so I could start saving for it?
Yeah.
And so, we're hoping to bring together a group of athletes and kind of sports figures to bring prominence to some of those programs, and build out a kind of long-term vision of kind of really promoting those programs into the future. So anybody that's interested, check that out. We'd love to see you there. One of the other areas that from an activity perspective that we're looking at doing more of in, the rest of 2022, but definitely in 2023 are our education conferences. And that's been part of something that we've done at the convention, where we do teacher training essentially, and teachers are able to go out and get CEUs, but we're looking to build on that. And we want to take that on the road. We want there to be opportunities for people to get their educators to learn what those inclusive techniques are, what an IEP is, what that means to have inclusion in your classrooms, some techniques to how to handle some of those issues that might pop up for them, or in some cases, just get teachers ready because it may be their first experience of having somebody on an IEP in their classroom.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at trying to do more of those all across the country. So for anybody that's listening, if you do know your local DSA wants to support that, you have a contact at a school district, or you're just interested, please do reach out to us. We're interested in coming into your communities and figuring out how to develop and grow and train those teachers. The other one that we've been really working on recently is we call them rural summits. They're basically mini conventions that we go and put on, but we try and do them in places. Rural is probably not even the right word. Hard to reach is I think the word that we're looking for, and getting to places where there might not be a DSA, there might not be a lot of families that have kids with Down syndrome, there might not be a lot of access for those families, and so to try and be in those places, that could also look like a Spanish-speaking community where there just aren't as many resources for that, and so we're trying to identify where those places are, what's needed in those instances, and trying to make sure that we are aligning and helping people in that regard.
Yeah, awesome. So one of the things that I have always been impressed with, so if I go to the NDSC website and I call the phone number, I don't get an automated system. I get a person. And I thought, oh, I'm so special. But yet it's not a back line that I had all these years. It is actually the main line to the NDSC. And I think that one of the things that's so wonderful is that while it is, yes, a very powerful, strong national organization doing all the things that we've just talked about on this podcast, it's also on the ground there for the families. And I think everything we've talked about today has really been about that. How would you say that a person hears this podcast and says, boy, I'd really like to get involved with the NDSC and partner with the mission that they're doing? What are some ways that they could do that?
Yeah, well, first is pick up the phone, give us a call, send us an email. As you mentioned, and Kishore, you are special, but everybody is special to us. We want to make sure that we're there to hear whatever it is that you need. We want to know what's going on the ground in your communities. We want to be able to be up to date on how we're addressing or helping and supporting those issues. So that's the number one way to get in touch with us, is reach out. All our emails are accessible. Our director of affiliate and family engagement programs, Tamara Persley, that is her role, is to make sure that we are picking up the phone, to make sure that we're engaging with your local groups, we're finding opportunities to partner and do that. I think that, I would say the conferences that I just mentioned, so both in education or different types of trainings, are a great way to partner with us. We have a lot of other toolkits and resources. So if you're on our website, you'll see an adult sibling toolkit. That's something that you can order. through NDSC, and we can get copies of those to you and your community. We can come in and do some kind of workshop or training around that. We can look at what other kind of opportunities there are that people might be interested in. So partnership can look like a lot of different things for us, and we're happy to do that formally in some instances and informally in others. But we're really looking to hear from our families and hear from what they need and be responsive to that.
That's great. And I think definitely in the show notes for today's episode, you'll be able to find the website, the phone numbers, contact information for NDSC there. So for anyone who may be interested, by all means, you can take a look there, including if you want to be very much involved, getting involved with the board and things like that. There's going to be an annual call for nominations for folks to join the board and have an influence in terms of the direction of the organization. All those things you can find on the website. Well, Jordan, I remember this time last year, we're thinking, who are we going to get to be able to lead the NDSC into the next phase? And when you came in and your name came up, it was an exciting time, and it remains an exciting time with your energy that you're bringing and everything that you're leading our organization towards. As we look ahead for the NDSC, do you have anything that you would want to add or say to our listeners in terms of what they might be able to expect moving forward in terms of exciting things on the horizon?
Yeah, well, the education training, I think, is a big one for us because there are so many teachers out there that are asking for this and that could use it, and the upside of where that can go is significant. I think the other thing that I would point to is our convention. We want to bring it back to the levels that it was before COVID. We want to get back to kind of some of our bigger convention sizes. We want you guys to join us there, to be part of that, we want to create that family experience for you, to give you a chance to network and connect with people all across the country that might be going through things that are similar that you are, or just get a chance to meet some new friends that understand your family and understand your situation. So we're hoping to continue to grow that, find partnerships and opportunities to make that fun and exciting for folks to be there and find a way to grow it. So we'd love to see you there, and we hope that the families find that valuable and can find their way to participating. We'll be in Orlando in 2023, which is a great place for families to go. It's easy to get to, it's easily accessible, lots of flights in and out of Orlando. So we're hopeful that you're all able to join us there. We'd love to see you.
That'll be fantastic. Yeah, it's always a great big family reunion, as we call it. So that'll be a lot of fun. Jordan, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I really appreciate you being a part of it and sharing what NDSC is doing. And to our listeners, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. It is so exciting to see how many families that we're able to touch. If there are topics that we have not discussed, or even topics you want to get a refresher on, please do reach out to us at downsyndromecenter@chp.edu. And as always, if you'd like to partner with us in what we do, including the creation of this podcast, please do reach out through the web at givetochildrens.org/Down Syndrome Center. And we would love to partner with you in that way as well. But until next time, bye-bye.